Hey guys, welcome back to another Kagurabachi video, and today we're going to be going over the character Samura, the new enchanted blade wielder that we were introduced to at Senkusuji Temple, and just why exactly that despite being a blind swordsman, this man makes the temple, according to everyone there, invincible. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any other future Kagurabachi updates. I cover it every single week, as well as other segments and other series that you may be reading, so feel free to check that stuff out. Basically, what we learned in the last chapter, because unfortunately I was out of the country, was Senkusuji Temple is definitely much more prepared for the threat of the Hoshaku than the previous temple was, simply because despite the extra experience, despite the strong sorcerers, and despite the added factor of Samura being there, the truth is they're much more prepared because they watched the previous temple get decimated. They've already known that the attack is coming, so they were better prepared for it as opposed to the previous temple that kind of got caught off guard. They were able to get a lot more reinforcements and basically just make sure that the temple defenses were much better than what they needed to be at previously, because not for nothing, the Datenseki crystals are making a big difference in the war between the Hoshaku and the Kamunabi. The fact that any of these nameless NPCs can achieve the exact strength and power of an enchanted blade wielder is scary to think about, because before, when we've seen Chihiro just cutting down people with no problems at all, I mean, that basically leaves little stakes. We're not really worried about these guys. Now that they can be as strong as Tenri, a character that was able to fight on the same level as the Enchanted Blade Mei, scary. But getting into the main point of the chapter, because the chapter is named Samura, basically covering all of the reasons why he is an absolute badass and why he is quote-unquote invincible, despite not being able to see anything. All the while, Hakuri is being treated for his restoration. He is essentially powerless at the moment. He is still, despite weeks passing, not able to recover his ability to access the storage dimension. And that's a main problem, because our whole entire point of gathering these enchanted blade wielders is so Hakuri can create a connection to them, and therefore creating a connection to their enchanted blade and being able to pull those blades directly from the Hoshaku's storage base and immediately break the 3-year deadlock that has been going on, because all of these enchanted blade wielders, despite not being able to access sorcery, they all gave up sorcery in order to wield these enchanted blades, right? Essentially making them powerless regardless of their physical stature, because as we see, Aruha is still pretty strong. He's a great warrior, but he's not going to be able to fight maybe 100 Hoshaku members at once, let alone an actual tattooed member. But it seems like in the character that we're introduced to, which is Samura, this new enchanted blade wielder who even Iruha claims is a strong and competent master, he's the reason why Aruha was able to become such a badass. In that quick couple chapters ago, we saw him slice off a couple people's arms like it was nothing. So still, not being a sorcerer, this guy is able to use his swordsmanship skills to kill even Datenseki crystal users, but we'll get into that. Samura is, if you don't already know and it wasn't completely obvious, is the trope of the blind samurai. This character who lost his eyesight, either was born blind or in Samura's case actually made himself blind, and we'll get into the reason why later, but the blind swordsman is able to tap into their other senses. You've heard the age-old myth, if you lose one sense, your other senses compensate, they grow stronger. So if you lose sight, your senses of smell, your senses of hearing, everything like that are going to be amplified tenfold, 20-fold, who knows how fold, because essentially, without sight, your brain can focus even more on these 4 senses as opposed to 5. And the blind samurai plays directly into that, because the blind samurai has always been able to use their hearing, their smell, everything around them and the environment in order to make up for the fact that they literally can't see. You would think not being able to see in a fight would be, that's it, that's it, that's all she wrote, you literally can't see me run at you and punch you in the face. But when you're able to rely on your hearing, which is basically the air resistance of that person's fist going through the air, you're able to rely on the smell, that BO that's coming off of this enemy that hasn't showered in 3 fucking weeks. I mean, you can use all of this information presented to you to counter, and because you're still a badass, just because you don't have sight, you can still train your body, you can still become an awesome sword blade wielder, you can still learn great fighting styles. I mean, there are even direct fighting styles that are primarily based on being blind. The blind swordsman is definitely a scary legend that has been used multiple times in different media, so I'm excited to see the way that it gets used in Kagurabachi, and it's already being used to an insane degree, which is pretty unique, by the way. Of course, as I mentioned before, Samura does rely on smells. He's able to smell his old acquaintances because he's become accustomed to their scent. That's how he's able to find Shiba in a crowd in that flashback last chapter, and that's also why he thinks that Chihiro smells so much like Rokuhira, and he's able to tell he's Rokuhira's son instantly. He also mistakes Hikori for Chihiro just because Hikori and Chihiro have spent so much time together, their scents have kind of molded together, but I digress. Smell is only for close acquaintances. Samura relies on sound, just as I mentioned, being able to hear different things and being able to hear air resistance and the way that things move against surfaces is very important when you can't see. But what makes Samura so dang unique is the way that he uses sound, because let's be clear, it's pretty obvious, especially with, again, the way that the blind samurai trope has been used in not just media, but in legends and myths and all across. It makes sense that some of these Hishaku members, as they do, are like, oh, he's using sound to respond because he's blind. Let's just be as silent as possible and fuck him up that way. Which, honestly, good on them for figuring that out, because that's just, you know, blind samurai counterattack 101. However, if Samura was just trying to nerf himself because he's so damn strong, that is not the case at all, because if anything, it seems like being blind has amplified his powers tenfold. The reason why Samura cut his eyes out, or at least slashed his eyes closed instead of being born blind, which is definitely an interesting moment, is because he wanted to cut himself off from all worldly passions. Being a very devout Buddhist, it seems, Samura wants to get as close to Buddha as possible, which requires reaching enlightenment. And I don't know if you guys know anything about enlightenment. You probably know the bare minimum, but going into enlightenment, it really requires a lot of work. And when I say work, I mean it's essentially separating yourself from the material world in general, which means you're separating yourself from desire, you're separating yourself from emotion, you're separating yourself from basically being a normal human being as it is. As Buddha's enlightenment essentially made him godly, that's what a lot of Buddhists assume, you know, I may be wrong, again, I'm not a Buddhist myself, that's what a lot of Buddhists aspire to, which, I mean, granted, it's definitely an interesting way of life. There's a lot of Buddhist monks that are literally out there accomplishing great deeds, not for necessarily the world, but for themselves and for the spirituality and for enlightenment in general. Because if you really think about it, separating yourself from desire, separating yourself from the normal ways the world works may not do the world great, but at the end of the day, it may do the self great, which is what's always important in my eyes. At least I can definitely get behind that. And I'm sure there's going to be Buddhists in the comments that either correct me or tell me that, you know what I mean, that I'm kind of on the right way, which I very much welcome. I would love to learn more, and I would love to be as correct as possible when describing this philosophy of life, because it really is insane. And there's a reason why characters like Samura and other characters throughout history and fiction are more than willing to devote everything they have to Buddhism and to reaching enlightenment. That being said, Samura is, of course, human at the end of the day. It's not an easy task to erase your desire. It's not an easy task to remove yourself from wanting, to remove yourself from human emotion, because even Shiba brings up comically that Samura, literally the day after making that decision, was very upset because he could not read his quote-unquote girly mag that he wanted, which of course is a worldly passion for sure. I mean, yeah, wanting to get your rocks off, definitely. And he gets so angry with Shiba criticizing him for this, to which Shiba reminds him again, hey, you know, you're getting angry right now. That's an emotion you literally said you wanted to avoid. So I think it's hysterical that, you know, of all things going on, Samura is still a character. He still has a personality. He's not a wandering, you know, emotionless, desireless character that is just cool, calm, and collected. He has a personality that, try as he might, he can't separate himself from. Regardless, his swordsmanship speaks for itself, because this man uses echolocation to fight. We see him take out some pretty easy Hishaku members. Basically, what Samura does is, when he sheathes his sword, he smacks the hilt against the wood of the sheath, therefore creates that quick little oscillating sound, and then that creates an echo. So just as bats locate their prey, bats locate their ways to go, he literally fights like a bat. As soon as that echolocation goes out, he's able to pinpoint, okay, this person is 5 meters away from me. This person is 15 meters away from me, to the left and to the right. And that's how he's able to essentially trick his foes, because again, everyone's gonna think he's going by sound, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's not necessarily right either, because he is just doing it in such a unique way that even if you're as silent as possible, as soon as he smacks his hilt down on the sheath, he's going to be able to echolocate you. So he's using the sheath sound, not everyone else's sound. I mean, sure, that helps, but that's very interesting, and it explains how he was not only able to keep his swordsmanship skills intact, but be able to increase their level and increase their unpredictability by becoming blind. It's in no means a handicap for this man. This man is so strong, he's even slicing Datenseki users in one hit, which is absolutely insane. Again, these are characters who are supposed to be on the level of an enchanted blade wielder, and he's just dusting these people, no problem. Of course, he feels the need to smoke an entire cigarette in one drag, which is impressive, painful to watch, right? For anyone that's smoked a cigarette before, you know that's insane shit. But on top of all of that, he apologizes because he's desecrating not just the Buddhist area and the temple that they're in, but also generally because he's just defying his own logic by doing this. He's very self-aware, right? Because as he charges all of the people he's killed, telling them that they're gonna go to hell because they're doing wanton killing, which is essentially merciless, unnecessary killing. It's not justified whatsoever. He's just murdering. They're just murdering people for no reason, no good of it. He even admits, hey, you know what? I'm probably guilty of the exact same thing. So at the end of the day, as much as he is devoted to his cause and wanting to remove himself from all worldly passions and gets angry when people criticize him for it, he's a realist in the sense that he knows he can't separate himself from every sin that sin is necessary, unfortunately, in this world. And as invincible as Samura makes the Senkutsuji temple, the monks at the temple are also doing a really good job at keeping the Hishaku members at bay. Even though the Hishaku have increased their soldier force tenfold simply because it didn't go well at the last temple, they nearly won. They lost to Ruha, so, you know, it was a failure overall, but they decimated the temple, and with Hirohiko, they were able to take out the elite sorcerers that did delete their Datenseki crystal users. So they've learned, and they're just adding more numbers to it because, again, those LinkedIn applications apparently have no absolute end. And the thing is, this just worries me because we still have 2 more temples. Sure, we're taking on, you know, the brunt of the force here at Senkutsuji, but what's going on with the other 2 people? Are the Hishaku going to attack those at the same time? I mean, that would make the most sense to me. I can't believe they're going one at a time here, so I'm going to hope that, because we've never seen Shiba fight on screen, I would love to see Shiba just defend a temple and an enchanted blade wielder by himself. And with Shiba and finding the perfect character to bounce off of, I know there's a woman enchanted blade wielder. She might be perfect to bounce off of Shiba with as just overall personality. And then there's another enchanted blade wielder who we'll just have to wait and see what's going on with them. And I'm sure the Hishaku, with a level of handicap, I should say, that we've gotten, if Hikori, 1, restores energy and is able to tap into the enchanted blades, but 2, we've already saved the Ruha. If we're able to save Samura and party up with everybody, we're going to be pretty freaking undefeatable. Because obviously we have not gotten into Hirohiko versus Chihiro yet. We don't know how that's going. I imagine we're saving that for one big whole chapter, and we're going to get into that maybe later, maybe next week, maybe afterwards, because Chihiro's first major fight against a Hishaku member, besides the leader, because the leader was kind of just taunting him. So we're definitely going to focus on that. And apparently he'll have new information on the Hishaku, which is what Hikori is hoping for. But imagine Chihiro takes out Hirohiko or something else goes on. I think the Hishaku need to balance the stakes. We have gotten so much, the scales have been tipped, right? So I'm waiting for them to tip back, because the Hishaku look like people that think of every eventuality, so I'm wondering how they're going to respond. At the very end of the chapter, after watching Samura beat the brakes off of all of these Hishaku members, Datenseki crystal wielding or not, we essentially get formally introduced to the man, the myth, the legend himself. The master of the Ioi, sorry if I mispronounced that, Ioi White Purity Sword Style. The original owner of the enchanted blade, Toby Mun, Samura Seiichi. and I am very much excited to see more of Samura and more of his badass blind swordsman style fighting and everything in regards to it. But most importantly, I'm excited to see what the hell happens with Chihiro and Hirohiko, which I'm hoping we get into next week. But until then, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, comment on the things that you think are going to happen or what your predictions might be. And if you're reading any other series, Sakamoto Days, Dandadan, Chainsaw Man, please feel free to check them out on this channel. Or if you want some more polished video essay type content, check out the main channel. And until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.